Hey, folks. Thanks for joining us on today's podcast. We're going to talk about what we've been playing lately and then give you more than 25 games to play in Spooktober. Scary, horror, and sometimes just weird games that you should be playing this month. Stick around.
You're listening to the Beans and Dice podcast, a podcast about how we game.
All right, folks. Thanks for sticking around for the Beans and Dice podcast. And in today's show with me is Rob, the rice to my bean. Say hey, Rob.
Hey, everybody.
Wayne out in Lutz, Florida.
Hey, guys.
And back with that wargaming side that I miss so much, my man, William.
What's going on, folks?
And I'm Carlos. We're the Beans and Dice podcast, and we're going to jump right into what we've been playing recently.
He said bean?
Yeah,
Bean?
yeah. You see the puns are so strong here.
Oh, boy.
Dad
All right.
jokes are strong.
Wayne, you're up.
So recently I got to finally play Brass Birmingham. I'm not new to the Brass world. I've played Lancashire, the original Brass, a bunch of times back in the day, so I hadn't gotten a chance to play Birmingham for a while. And so I finally got it to the table, got to play it, really like it. I can see why it's become so popular. There's some subtle differences, I think, between Brass Birmingham and Brass Lancashire that make them interesting. I think, the one thing, like the loan, like in Brass, I'm not going to explain the game of Brass because it's pretty complicated, but you're building industrial England in, turn of in the 1800s. But I think the big difference is like the loans in Brass Birmingham. You can take you just take a 30 gold loan. In Brass Lancashire, you can vary that loan. You can take a 10, 20, or 30 loan. And I thought in Birmingham the selling and needing beer to sell was an interesting concept as well. And then the wild cards, the cards that you can trade in for that count for anything. So I think. I think Birmingham is a little bit more accessible than Lancashire. Obviously, I think the complexity is a little bit different. I felt like in all the times I played Brass Lancashire, it was tight. I mean, there were turns when you were like $1 away from being able to do what you need to do, and so you basically can't do your turn because you have to take a loan and then wait a whole turn. And I felt like in Birmingham, after the first couple of rounds, money was really never an issue, which makes the game played a lot differently when money wasn't an issue. And I always had the money I needed to do things and buy different industries. So I can easily see why Brass Birmingham has become so popular because it's not as just soul crushing as Brass Lancashire can be. Because I've been in games like Lancashire where like entire turns, all four players were just like, well, guess I'm not doing that because I'm $1 away from being able to do anything. Oh, guess I'm not doing that because I'm $3 away from being able to do anything. Whereas in Birmingham, the four of us that were playing, we were basically just able to, constantly build and move and work up our tracks and build our industries and play around. The beer thing really does kind of throw a little monkey wrench in that because you have to be careful about building your breweries and then people snatching your beer from you if you need it the next turn. So there's definitely some strategic think to that. I definitely think I own both. I bought both the deluxe copies. They'll both stay in my collection, but I think in general I would introduce people to Brass by playing Birmingham first, and after they have 4 or 5 plays of Birmingham, and goes, okay, now let's play Lancashire because this will crush you.
That's a selling point.
Yeah, it's a selling point. It's great. They're definitely very, very similar. They all have the same basic game mechanics, but I think there's just enough difference between the two to make them both intriguing plays.
Cool. Well, I know we've been a big fan of Carlos and I know have played Birmingham, not Lancashire. Yeah. So we can't really speak too much on the comparison, but I know we're both huge fans, and I know Birmingham is the higher rated of the two on the BGG. Not that that means anything, but I'd be interested now to. I'll have to have you teach us, or teach me at least, Lancashire at some point. So
I was going to say, teach me your ways, because I don't ever remember a moment where I was like, oh, I got enough money to do everything I want. We must not manage money the same, because I always felt like I was just behind.
I
know
think
they've got
I'm sorry.
the loans.
The loans, and I think in Birmingham it's just you take a 30 gold loan. But even after the first age, I don't think I even took a loan in the whole second half. And I think part of that might be just because I had played the original Brass, now called Brass Lancashire, so many times, and the money is so tight that in this game it just didn't seem as tight, which is okay. I that's not a detraction to me. I think it's a great thing because I think, my biggest complaint about playing the original Brass was sometimes you were just like, man, I just can't do anything. I don't have the money I need to do things. So it's good, and I like the beer aspect and the pottery aspect and some of the new things in this game. So they're cool. I think that's probably why I felt like the money wasn't as tight because I'm so used to playing the original Brass. But no, it's good. There's a reason why both these games are in the top 25 on BGG. They're both great games. We could talk about if they're really that much different that they deserve their own entry. But it's a great game, and I think any gamer, this is a game that's a must play.
All right, next on the list, Rob. You got some games played lately?
Yeah, my most recent played is I got a chance to play my third playthrough of My Father's Work, which is a game that you and I, Carlos, played for the first time a couple of months ago. I guess Michael Fortino from Armada Games brought it over to your place and wanted us to learn it and play it. So we played twice. In My Father's Work, it's I'll call it semi-cooperative. I don't know if that's how they explain it, or how they would describe it. But it's a game where you're kind of having to work together to make certain progress in the storyline, or certain positive progress, I should say. You can choose to kind of work together or independently. I know on our first playthrough, we played there's 3 different scenarios in it. We played the cost of disease, and we did not quite grasp that working together part of the scenario. We were all trying to do our own thing, and our city, the map, this is a worker placement game, and the map and the worker placement spots deteriorated because we weren't investing in the city and working together to donate money and do things that the story was trying to point us to. And so by the end of the game, this game, at the end of it, there's 3 different scenarios. I think there's 8 endings for each scenario, so there's potentially 24 different endings that you can get to. And I think that first play, we probably got one of the worst, if not the worst, ending we could get in the game, because we were all kind of working against each other. We did play that scenario again. The 3 of us got together a few weeks later and played it again.
Hold on, I'm going to interrupt. I'm going to stop.
Go ahead. Yeah.
It's
All right.
3 generations, right? So imagine like 3 generations of families. And when we showed up to town, by the time we were done with it, the town had regressed way farther back than when we got there after 3 generations.
yeah. Each generation, it took a big step backwards. So we played it again. We played it, like I say, a few weeks later. We wanted to see if we could get a different experience out of it, and we discussed before we started the play that this time let's work a little more cooperatively, and let's even though it is competitive at the end, there's only one winner, and you're advancing up a score track. But we were like, let's work together. Let's make sure we kind of fulfill some of these objectives that the game's trying to push us to. And in that particular game, I feel we probably got one of the better endings. And by the time we there's a storybook, and you flip pages, and it can add or subtract worker placement spots. It can add or subtract different things that the spots do depending on how you interact with the story. And by the time through that we got through that 3rd generation of the second playthrough where we were working together, we had a prosperous town. Everything was roses and daisies, and we had a whole map of places to go and all kinds of positive experiences.
It was almost like we had an X-Men Academy, like an Xavier-style X-Men Academy. It was great. Things were awesome.
It was really cool. And so in this one we played, I was teaching the game to 3 new players, and so Patrick Havert, Dan Erdzik, and Samantha Lurch, and we played over at your turn, and all 3 of them wanted to learn it, and it was Patrick Havert's copy of the game. And so we jumped in, and I wanted to do a different scenario just because I'd done the one already, and I figured if they're getting a new experience, I might as well get a new experience. So we played, it's called The Cost of Disease was the first one. It's a time of war, and so very different. The first one we played, The Cost of Disease, it's all about trying to eradicate a disease that's mutating and altering. In the time of war, it's actually all based on developing weapons, different types of weapons for a military cause. And so very different experience as far as what we were kind of trying to do. It's kind of still that semi-co-op. The game is pushing you in certain directions, trying to get you to do certain things. Again, but at the end of the game, there's only one winner. And so I feel this playthrough, we probably had somewhere kind of in the middle of the experiences out of the 8 endings. We had a few stages where we added some spots to the board and did some positive things, and then we took a few steps backwards where we started getting the citizens angry at us, and so the town, and so they started turning on us later in the game. But this game is really, really interesting. It's really good, and I'm really enjoying the different kinds of experiences you can have. I'm usually not a fan of semi-co-op. I've talked on the show quite a bit about how I don't like semi-co-op. I don't like the fact in a lot of semi-co-ops you can have like one person win, you can have no people win. I still like the fact in this one you're still going to have a scoreboard at the end, and you're going to have a first, second, third, fourth place. If you're playing with 4 people, so it's not one against all or anything like that. So I like that part of it, but the story in this is still a big part of the thing, so you've got to be prepared. I think our game the other day was about 4 hours, and I told them this going in, but it is about an hour worth of reading text and narrating out loud, and then it's about 3 hours of playing the game. So you got to be prepared for that going in, but I'm really enjoying my plays of my father's work. It's really solid game.
Anyone else played it here before? All right, I will sound off on everything Robert said. I didn't know if I was going to like it. After my 2 experiences, loved it. Just the time commitment was the one piece where it was like, man, I there's so many other games at that length that I would rather play because of the semi-co-opiness.
Yeah, all 3 of my plays. Yeah, all 3 of my plays have been probably right around 4 hours, and that's been with the one group we played it almost back to back, and so by the second play we knew what we were doing. We thought we were going to fly through it, and it was still almost a 4-hour play. And then again, the 2 times I've taught it and learned it, both of those were easily 4 hours. So it is definitely a time commitment.
I'm going to go with a faster game. It don't take 3 hours to play this one, and
yeah, go ahead.
It's in the title. It's called Dutch Blitz.
Okay.
I tried to teach this one to Robert, and it didn't pan out as I expected.
We played it before.
Yes, we have. We played it at Armada. I've played it here at the house with the kids. I was on that work trip to Idaho, so I took it with me because it's small. It's just a pack of cards. I think I got them like at Barnes & Noble. I don't even know who the publisher of this game is because it's just an old... It's called a wonderful good game. It's got this Dutch theme to it, and what you're doing is it's a card shedding game. You're going to have a deck of cards in front of you that have numbers and either boy or girl, and you're going to be taking that deck and trying to get rid of your 10 Blitz cards to trigger the end of the game. You're going to do that by placing, much like solitaire. What do we call that solitaire game, that basic old-fashioned solitaire game where you're playing cards in numerical order on top of each other? Anybody know what it's called? Just solitaire? Spider solitaire? Crab solitaire? I can't remember.
Solitaire.
That's what it's called. It's called solitaire.
Solitaire. So it's like multiplayer solitaire with a speed element to it. Because in the middle of the board, every time somebody flips up a 1 from their deck, from their hand, they're going to have to put that 1 in the middle of the board in the Dutch piles. And then players can start playing onto that 1. It's either red, blue, yellow, or green colors. So if I put a yellow 1 in the middle of the board, Wayne, if you got the 2 yellow, you can throw that 2 yellow on there, right? And you're going to get points by getting more cards into the center of the board, into the Dutch piles. And then you can have these side posts on your side of the board where you can put cards in reverse order. So from descending, I would say, so like 10 down to 1, but they have to alternate in certain ways to be able to put them. So you kind of got to store them over there on the side so that when you're ready to, you can start moving them into the Dutch piles in the middle. But everything's simultaneous. There is no turns. We just say, go. And as soon as we say go, people start moving cards. You're moving cards from your wood pile, which is in your hand, into either your posts, which are in front of you to kind of store them for later, or into the Dutch piles in the middle. The Dutch piles is where you get points. But you're only allowed to use one hand. So one hand holds the deck, one hand holds the card you're looking at. So you draw 3 from the top of the deck, flip it. That top card that's face up, you can move it to one of those piles. And it just starts moving. You're like, okay, where does that go? Where can that go? Where can that go? And you're just running through your deck, trying to move your cards into the center. It's just chaos, solitaire chaos, and fun. I liked it. I still enjoy it. I tried to teach it to my wife. She, on that first play, it did not go great.
Not catching on?
And I think it's because of that speed element that Robert didn't like as well. It's that pressure.
It's a dexterity game.
It is. It feels like a dexterity game mixed with like a matching game.
Yeah.
Mixed with a solitaire game.
I'm not big on those
people who have ADD.
Those pattern
it was great for me
kind of games. Yeah. Yeah, matching colors, matching patterns. That's
And then it's.
I'm not.
I think
quick with
the part that I struggle with too is watching others do stuff. Like I kind of want to watch to see what you're doing, and then sometimes your movement of doing stuff distracts me from what I'm doing. But for what, $10-15 for a pack of cards, plays 4 players, buy 2 sets, you can play up to 8. I say give Dutch Blitz a try. I like it.
I already did. It was okay.
Yeah, it was all right.
Thanks, William.
Yeah, it was a game.
Well, I mean, it's not my genre. I mean, it's a game. I like it, but I wouldn't say if you pull out things like, "Hey, Dutch Blitz," I'm like, "Yeah, I'm gonna go play that."
Yeah, not any better than Uno or.
I'll play it though.
There's
There's nothing else to play.
Yeah, it's all right.
No,
I think way better than Uno.
Way better than Uno. Oh, sorry.
It's the chaos that makes it fun. All right, William, what you been playing lately?
I've been able to play any board games. I haven't get really got out of the house to play anything. So we had the hurricane come through, so I didn't lose any power. So I've been playing lots of video games.
Video games.
So the recent
Any one video game you want to share with the folks at home?
I just finished Expeditions of Rome. So that's a strategy, grid-based, tactical game. If you love Roman history and culture and way things run back then, it's a good game for you. It takes basically an alternate version of history when Julius Caesar invaded Gaul, and instead of him invading Gaul, you are. In fact, you end up killing Julius Caesar early in the game.
Oh, Brutus.
Yeah, well, when he was young. So it takes an alternate version of history like that, and you basically just says you can be a tyrant, you can be somewhere in between, or you can be all for the Republic. And so you can get a couple endings in the game. I got the Republic ending, I guess. I decided not to march my armies across the Rubicon, so I had a choice to do that. So, and there's also multiple characters in it. So you could find out what they're doing in the story. You can fall in love with one of the characters. All the characters are permadeath, so if they die in battle, that's it. They're gone. Their story's done in the game, and it actually grades you on that later on in the game. When I found out later on, so
this is right in line with all those war games you play.
Yeah, it was. It kept me entertained. The language was accurate to a certain extent, I would say, because there was definitely a language barrier based from where the game was published on. But I would say they got a lot of Latin right. So,
is this something that's online, or is it all just on your local machine?
No, I bought it. It's just a single player game.
Okay.
It's a single player game. Probably
Gotcha.
about, if you do everything, probably about over 70 hours of gameplay.
Okay.
Nice.
I didn't do everything. I did about 45 hours.
Just added it to my Steam wish list. So
You should look at it. Yeah, it's a good game. I bought it when it first came out, and there were some bugs in it, but they cleaned it up. But if you're a veteran of playing those kind of games, I still recommend playing normal first, because otherwise that permadeath thing will really get to you real early.
Cool.
So
All right, thanks for sharing, man. That's a good one. We do all kinds of gaming here. It is about how we game, and that's what we've been playing lately.
Oh, I'm going to kill you.
So stick around as we get to our main course today. It's going to be a big one. It's a big main course. We're not going to do a dice advice. We're going straight to the main course, where we get to talk to you about spooky games in October that we recommend. Stick around.
Yeah, you should look at it, Wayne. Just watch the video of it.
yeah, I got it on my list. I was looking at the trailer. It looks cool. I like it because I love the Rome Total War type games. So it seems like it'd be kind of like a cool.
I'm waiting for William to get his Kickstarter for Total War.
Yeah, I went the Alexander the Great pledge. So we got everything.
All right. Thanks for sticking around. We're getting into our main course. It is October. This is going to be the first podcast of October, so we want to drop for you some advice-ish, not quite dice advice, but some advice on games that we think should come to your table in the month of October, where things are a little spookier, a little scarier, a little more fun for the family and friends. So let's start with, I think, the number one game for me that should always make it out in October, and that's Betrayal, House on the Hill. So Betrayal at House on the Hill was originally an Avalon Hill game. I think it is still published by Avalon Hill, but it's from 2004. Is the one that I know of. That's the one I have at my home. That's the one that I keep. And it was designed by, Rob Daviau is the main designer I can think of, and I know there's a few others on it. But back in that day, Rob Daviau has done so much work for so many different companies, including Hasbro. That's who sticks with me on the designer for Betrayal at House on the Hill. I had this game when it first came out back in 2004. It's probably one of the first 10 board games that I bought in this new world of modern gaming. It was just after my son was born in 2003, middle of 2003, when I finally got this copy of this game and played it with the family. In Betrayal at House on the Hill, you're exploring a haunted house, and you're all friends. But at some point, one of you turns into a traitor, tries to kill the others. You don't know who. You get your own mission as a traitor. Everybody else has another mission on how to stop you. And there's 100 different ways to 40-something, different ways to play the game with stories that's going to just level out to craziness and fun. I can't think of another game that we should play in Halloween time than Betrayal at House on the Hill.
Yeah, I mean, you just have to understand that there's going to be some scenarios that are broken, or some especially with the original edition. Some things are going to go south, but that's kind of like horror movies. Sometimes horror movies and spooky movies go south, so it's just meant to be fun.
The heroes don't always win.
Right.
Yeah,
Rarely do heroes win.
Yeah.
You get into that haunt, the whole traitor thing comes up, or and I guess some of the scenarios it's not even necessarily a traitor, but one person ends up breaking off and having their own little game that's different than what the rest of the people are trying to do, and that can be interesting. That's always a fun part of that game, and I know some people don't ever like being the one once it's singled out. They'd rather be part of the group, but if you get the right group of people playing this game, it can be a blast if people really get into the roles and try to play it the way it's supposed to be played, in my opinion. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I know William Robert and myself and Rob's daughter finished Betrayal Legacy, so I'm just going to adjunct in there. If you're looking for something more than just in October, go get Betrayal Legacy. If you're looking for something lighter for the family or just for fun, like let's say you want to play Betrayal, but you don't want to go into that 40 different scenarios of Betrayal, I also have a copy of Betrayal Scooby-Doo, which I got from Armada Games, and I'll tell you, that is just as much fun as regular Betrayal, and it's got that Scooby-Doo flavor to it. And instead of somebody turning into a traitor, one of the players, Shaggy or Velma, they get locked into a cabinet, right? The bad guy takes them. So that's how your character disappears, and then the other characters have to work together to try to get that character back, to save that character, and then that player who disappeared becomes the traitor.
Nice.
But you decide who becomes the traitor. It takes away that whole making someone be the traitor. The group decides. That way it's more friendly. So that's Betrayal at House on the Hill. Wayne, you've got the next one.
Next one, yeah. So I'll start talking Zombie Kidz Evolution. I know we've talked about that on the podcast a few times, but it's a kids based legacy game, and so it's basically you are a couple of kids stuck in a school trying to fight off and close the doors before the zombies get in and overrun the school. And so, hey, it's October, a lot of zombie stuff. You're going to see a bunch of zombie games kind of in our list here. But this is one for play with the kids, which I have a couple of kids games that I'll talk about. And it's, if you can bring, it's very light. The artwork isn't very gory. So it's good for younger kids. And it's got a little bit of a legacy aspect to it. So the game starts off real easy and it ramps up over gameplay. So it would be a great one to, pick up and play once a day through the month of October and work your way into the sort of the campaign of Zombie Kidz Evolution. So I think it's a fun game to play with young kids. It's real light, and it teaches some kids some basic mechanisms that they can use in future games, and it shows how the game rules can morph over time. So it's just a fun light game to play with kids, but zombie themed, so it works for the month of October.
You got me to buy it. My kid loves it.
Yeah, so Carlos and I had a chance to play this with our youngest sons. And I know he played it a lot more. They played two-player quite a bit. And then I know there's different objectives in the game, and one of them was to play with 4 players. And so that was kind of the perfect segue for him to bring me and my son in. And my son really enjoyed it. My youngest is 10 years old, And for that age group, I mean, like you mentioned, Wayne, it's definitely good for teaching some game mechanics, teaching some cooperative. It's definitely a cooperative game. We're working together, trying to kind of puzzle out how to beat back the zombies and complete the objectives. And so just some of those real basic gaming skills that'll go on for their gaming lives into the future. It's really good.
Willem, we got you next on the list.
Okay. So, got the game that you probably want to play if you ever want to feel like you're a mad scientist and you want to create Frankenstein's monster. How would you be? Would you have morals or would you not have morals? That's pretty much how Abomination is. So that's the game Abomination. So, the goal is to create a monster from scratch, which is parts. So, do you want to go in a graveyard? Do you want to steal them from the graveyard for people already dead? Or you want to get them fresh from the morgue and pay someone off? Or you want to get them off the boats from the docks and pay someone off? And, do you really care what the people think? No? All right, well, they're just going to look at you as an immoral person, and you can play the game as like that if you wish. Or you can be completely different and have as much morals, which I played that time, and I actually won, I think, that game, which I had my morale, maxed out. But the end goal is to really, get that monster out there. And it's got a lot of squeamish bits, I would say. The cardboard bits for the body parts. They got one side with no skin, the other side with skin. And I think you can have male or female, right? Is it?
Yeah, I don't remember. I thought they were all pretty unisex, but
I think they were all pretty unisex. But they were definitely showing a lot of blood and veins and stuff like that in the game. Even the other bits, getting bones and organs and all sorts of things.
I was going to say, you got blood and so blood is
and
one of your resources and organs, and you got the little
basically
jars.
A crazy scientist, just trying to create a monster. How would you do it, and do you really care about having any morals? So, what a better way of horror game than something like that?
Right, you got those different tracks that you're getting the points on. So one of them is the morality. So you can, if you go low on that track, you actually lose points at the end of the game. But if you keep your morality up, you can get bonus points at the end. You've got there's a knowledge.
It's one of those mechanics, where you can take a real big hit on it early in the game, so it gives you really good boost for your engine making, I guess you can say. But then towards the middle and the end of the game, it's hard to work that back, to the right spots.
Right.
Or
like mentioned this,
someone else in the game can have more morals like I did and block certain sites for people who don't have good morals or, a good morality. So, that's what I did a lot. I think I did it for almost like every round to one of you guys. I blocked one site that you guys couldn't go to get certain things.
Yeah,
I
like you
had
mentioned,
a card or an ability that did it.
Yeah,
But it's a really good, fun game. Takes a little time, but, it's a little bit long.
Yeah, like I mentioned, Abomination is a game with a lot of theme in it. I know there's some people who are a bit against this game. Particularly, I know the folks over at Dice Tower have talked about it quite a bit. Yeah, that they don't like the goriness in this, and they don't play it just because they think it goes a little too far that way with reanimating dead things and trying to bring things back to life, and so they're not big fans of that. But as far as
trying to make their own friends.
Yeah, the spooky Halloween-y type stuff. That definitely fits in.
You can't hit a game for trying to be what it should be, and it hits the nail right on the head.
Yep.
Sorry, and that's what the game does perfectly right. Then it's a good game.
A lot of people like it for that reason. Yep. I'm going to jump in here with the next one. I'm going to hit up a bit of a classic, I'm going to call it. It's a game that came out, I'm looking here at the BGG. It's 2014, and a game that's been pretty popular. It's actually, this surprises me here, 168 overall on the all-time games list on BGG, and this is Dead of Winter. Dead of Winter is another zombie-themed game. They call this a psychological survival game, and so this one was one of the early games that I played in my gaming career. It was another of those that it was when I started gaming about probably 15 years ago, or a little less than that. It was a game that was really popular. It was just popping up everywhere. Everybody was talking about it. Everybody was playing it, and so I got to play it. It's a game, again, that doesn't fit quite up my alley because it is semi-cooperative. This is a game where each person has an objective that they're trying to complete during the game, and then everybody is working together for a bigger objective. So you're trying to beat back the zombies for a certain number of rounds, and you're trying not to let them get into your main home base area where everybody's located at. But everybody has a hidden objective that they get at the beginning of the game that requires them to do certain things that may be counter to the main goal, or they may make you look suspicious for trying to do things and make certain decisions in the game. And so there's ways to vote people out of the colony, to lock people up, and to do different things. And this is a kind of a fun game watching people turn on each other. Again, it's semi-cooperative, so I don't like the fact, again, that this has always been my complaint about semi-cooperative, that you can have no winners. You can all lose together. You can have one person who wins, because if you don't get overrun by the zombies, then everybody reveals their objectives at the end. And if you've completed your objective, then you're a winner, and there can be multiple winners. Everybody can win in this game. So again, not my favorite mechanic, but as far as fitting the kind of the spooky, kooky type Halloween vibe, I'd say this is a big one on that list, because with a little dimmed lights and some candlelight, this one's set in a post-apocalyptic, zombie overrun, winter cold setting. This one really fits with the November, October-November time frame and theme that we're shooting for in this one. But has everybody played this one? Or I know Carlos actually hasn't ever played this one.
I have owned it for a long time, and I've still yet to play it. And I blame Barry. We were going to play it for my birthday, and then Barry canceled last minute. It was in October, and I've not yet been able to get it played.
Yeah.
I have a copy here too, so.
The biggest barrier, I think, for getting this one to the table is the player count. I think this one really shines. I'm looking here. It says 2 to 5 players, best with 4. I would say with 4 or 5 is where you really want to play this game.
Mm-hmm.
So that can be the hard part about getting it to the table, is you need 4 or 5 people who really want to play this game. So.
Well, keeping it on that mind-bendy theme and social aspect, for me, the next title I want to bring up is Werewolf. And Werewolf apparently has been around since the 80s. But I got introduced to it not as really a game. It was more of an activity. Because in Werewolf, it's a social deduction game where a certain number of players are going to be werewolves, and a certain number of players are going... It's a large group game. So we're talking 6, 7, 8, 10 people or more. Some are going to be werewolves, very small amount, and then some are going to be villagers. And each night, everyone closes their eyes. So you're going to pretend at night, close your eyes, and then you're going to allow the werewolves to open their eyes and pick someone to kill. The werewolves all open their eyes, look at each other, pick someone to kill, a villager, and then werewolves close their eyes. And then everybody opens their eyes, and the moderator points out to who got killed. And that person's dead. They can't talk no more. They're a ghost. So they go away. And now everyone together has to vote and decide who they think were the werewolves that caused the death of this poor villager. And you repeat this cycle where you're going to kill somebody and then vote for who you think is a werewolf, which most of the time you're going to probably pick a villager and kill them as well, because you're going to try to kill them like a werewolf. And you're going to keep going until somebody wins. One side is going to win or the other. Either the werewolves win or the villagers win by killing off all of the werewolves. I got introduced to this, I think, with pieces of paper with W's and V's on them. Because you don't even need the cards. You're just playing an activity, werewolf. And that's how and now it's kind of feel like it's blown up. There's like Ultimate One Night Werewolf. There's werewolves. And I think in the basic game, there's a character that can be like the seer. And a seer can do things like they can ask the moderator, is that person a werewolf? To get some answers to kind of see. But then they don't know how to give out that information without telling everyone that they're the seer. And then the next night, the werewolves just kill them anyway because they know they're the seer. So there's so much social going on here. And I've taken it to that year I took Rob, your son, to Boy Scout camp. I took it up there with me in Georgia, Stone Mountain, or Thunder Mountain. We played that thing with those boys till like 3 or 4 in the morning. Those teenage boys, they were eating it up. I've played it at work, in team groups. It just seems to fit with so many different player groups, as long as you have a group of 10 or more.
Yeah, I would say I have probably several hundred hours of playing Werewolf over the years. Yeah, and it's gotten to the point where, Dragon Con and Necro and other cons, there's whole rooms that are just, this is the Werewolf room, right? And it's a great game, and it can really be great. But it's almost to the point where I try not to play it as much anymore, because you get a lot of – it's dependent upon who the moderator is. And if you get people in there that want to spend 45 minutes talking about who the werewolf is or who the villager is, and they stretch out the game, it's not meant to be that, like, insane – like, you have to move it along, right? It could be a great game in the right groups. And like you said, Boy Scouts, or like even in like work environments, it can work well, or in conventions, it can work well. But you have in conventions with gamers who are werewolf players, you have to have a good moderator that can like rein in those kind of like people who want to spend 45 minutes talking about who this person is or that person is. But it's a great game, and you said there's a million expansions, Werewolf of Miller's Hollow, and there's all these different roles that you can play now. So it's really good. And the game dates back, you said, back to the 80s. It used to be called Mafia, then it became Werewolf. So it's a great game, especially with the theming.
Yeah, I like the short version. Is it one night where it's I played a few times where there's a soundtrack or an app or whatever you download, and it narrates for you, and you're done with the whole game in about 10 minutes. I mean, that's and of course we reset it. We play it 3 or 4 or 5 times whenever that game comes out. I'm not a fan of the longer version, like Wayne said. Some of those sessions I've seen go 2-3 hours or something. When you got a room full of people playing, and with obviously player elimination, those kinds of things. They've done some things over the years to try to eliminate that. I think there's something where the people become ghosts or whatever, and they still can participate. But I like the quick version of it. I've never been a big fan of the social deduction and trying to manipulate and lie to people. And I don't know if I'm not good at it. I just don't enjoy having to do that. So it's never been one of my favorite games. But obviously, this is a huge game. Millions of people play it and love it, and so
there are whole rooms at every convention dedicated to 24/7 Werewolf.
Yeah, or at least all night. I know, like at Dice Tower, they do it all night, so it starts at like 8 p.m. and then people are still playing at 4 in the morning. So yeah, not for me, not my kind of thing. But yeah, it's hugely popular game. Yeah.
Well, speaking of rooms, mansions, lots of rooms.
Oh yeah. Mansions of Madness is the game I'm talking about next, and it, to me, this is like the quintessential game to play in the month of October. It is spooky, it's intense. The app integration of the episodes, the music, just the theming is fantastic. And I think it's the kind of game that if you have friends over that are not gamers, you can break out Mansions of Madness, play one of the intro scenarios, a couple hours, and I've had people who are not gamers at all, never played a modern board game, and they just get into it. They love it. They play it for a couple hours, and it goes by super quick. And I've had hardcore gamers, my wife and some of our friends will play the 4, 5, 6 hour scenarios, the big long ones, and it's just so immersive. The script, the app really. I know some people who hate apps in board games. I think this is the quintessential example that I would give of an app that works well with a board game. It takes you through the whole thing. It narrates the things that are necessary. There's a sense of urgency in the game. As you're getting towards the end of a scenario, you feel this ramp up of the terror, the horror, and the agency that you have to finish the mission. And so it's just really, to me, this in our whole list we're talking tonight, this is probably the game that's like number one on my list of, in SpookTober, October, Halloween, whatever, this is a game to play because it's a great game you can play with all kinds of different groups.
Yeah, I know this is one that Carlos and I have played. We really liked this a lot. This was, a few years back, and then we got my daughter into it, so the 3 of us started playing, and then we got my son into it, and so then 4 of us were playing, and we were talking about going into the campaign, and you can kind of string them together and play through a little storyline. And I think we got 3 or 4 games into that before we kind of fizzled out on it and didn't play so much. But yeah, this is one I definitely wouldn't mind getting back to the table soon. It's been a while since we played, Carlos. I'd say at least 4 or 5 years probably. But one I definitely would play again at any time.
Yeah, we got in trouble with Mike Fortino at Armada because I brought the tablet, but then I also brought a 9-inch Bose Bluetooth speaker. I'm talking big old Bose.
Yeah.
And that deep rumbly bass, from the music, which, Wayne, you hit it on the head, that the aesthetics and the atmosphere, the ambiance that's created with that game is just so spooky.
Yeah. Mike was like, don't bring that back in here, please.
What's there for that one? Okay. I guess it's on me, huh?
Keep it rolling.
Keep it rolling. So, everyone's familiar with John Carpenter, right? Great filmmaker for horror movies. So everyone's familiar with the movie The Thing, but not many people are familiar where The Thing came from. It came from a novel written back from 1938 called Who Goes There. So, so the game I'm talking about is the game called Who Goes There. So particularly the second edition version, which is what I have. It's basically you are playing the characters from not the movie, but from the novel. A lot of people have a little disconnection, disassociation with that. So you're playing all the information, all the game information is based off the novel that was written back in 1938. It does incorporate some things from the Thing series, the Thing movies, very little, but mostly because today's generation, who plays games, wasn't alive back in 1938. But it's a social deduction game in the beginning, or actually in the beginning, it's a completely cooperative game, and then at some point in the game, it turns into a social deduction game. Who do we trust? It's one of those games where the game completely starts off with everyone being on the same team. Everyone needs to work together. Something's going to go crazy and awry, and the Thing will appear and turn someone else into the Thing, and now we need to know who can we trust, who's not the Thing. And the game can basically have a few winners. It can have all the humans players survive and they get off the helicopter. Or the Thing kills all the humans, or the Thing gets on the helicopter, so all the players who became the Thing win. So, I like it. I think you played it, Carlos. We played with 6 players actually, almost max players, right?
Yeah, you taught it to me at your turn at a game day.
Yeah,
and
it went pretty. We lost. We came to the very end. I think a lot of us froze to death, and then the last person got knocked out unconscious, and the Thing just was able to get eat the rest of us, and that was it. But it really came down to the wire. I think the helicopter did arrive, and we were almost there, and we just got too exhausted. The frostbite took over us. It was too cold. The Thing knocked down all the doors, so all the wind was coming in, and it was.
I didn't trust anyone. I didn't trust any. It was bad, and the game did a good job of giving you the spooky feels, right? That tension that you really feel like in your gut.
Yeah,
where you don't trust people. And it does that with this blood test, and it's a plastic, almost looks like the size of a thumb drive, plastic blood test.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And you slide the slider to indicate whether you've been touched or not by the Thing. And there are times when you can choose to test with someone, or sometimes you can make someone test and reveal to you. So that moment when you're like, okay, I slept in the same bunk as you last night. So now I get to see if you've been touched by the Thing, and they hand you the slider, and it's got this audible click for when you open it. So it's almost like Sheriff of Nottingham, that little snap tension. You open it, and you're like, oh crap, like damn,
and again,
I trusted you.
The rules specifically state try not to make a face when you look at that thing.
Oh yeah.
When you look at the little clicker, you take it. You put it back in the neutral position, and you slide it right back to the player and say, all right, I know what you are, and you know what I am. And you just keep going from there. The only thing in the game is that there's only 1 out of the 12 cards that can potentially make you a Thing. It's only 1 of them out of the 12 cards total in the game.
The damage cards that are dealt, one of them
The damage cards that are dealt. You can deal a damage card, and it can be completely blank, but you're not allowed to show the players. You just
know that you have Wayne. It's like Wayne's got a damage card. We don't know what's underneath it.
Yeah, we don't know.
We don't know if he's touched. It's great. And Wayne, I know last week you talked about this theme that you're seeing with these dark games, right? So it does have a darkness to the board itself, right? The aesthetics and these games getting darker and darker, but it really contrasts it with almost a cartoony characters and drawings and items that. It does it well.
Arcade kind of style of drawing.
So it does it well. It gives you that darkness, so you feel like the board is dark, like it is nighttime, but it isn't like Merchants of the Dark Road, where you're like squinting to try to figure out what's on the board.
Nice.
No, the board's very, very easy. It's you only can go to 6 places on the board, 3 inside and 3 outside. That's it. You can't really do much of anything else, and a lot of player interaction because. You need to feed your people. You need to find out who you're going to bunk with at night. Who do you trust? You need to work with other players because you need to craft weaponry to stay alive. So, yeah.
Well, while we work with other players, Robert can tell us about the cooperative game Arkham Horror, the LCG.
Yeah, I'm not going to talk a whole lot about this one just because I've talked about it a lot on the show and other places, but I was just quickly looking over our list here, and I think this may be my number one out of all the games that we've got on our list here. And for me, this one definitely requires a bit of a time commitment. There's a learning curve to it. There's a whole language that goes on with this one. But just the incredible world of the H.P. Lovecraft, the Arkham, the town, little quiet New England town of Arkham that you're dropped into, and then the whole Cthulhu thing. You know, these weird things start happening, and you start uncovering these cultists and these weird rituals and chanting and stuff that's going on, and then just getting sucked into this world. This game that I think definitely is best solo or two-player. They advertise you can play it with 3 or 4. It requires a couple copies of the base set. And for people who like deck building outside of the actual gameplay, being able to spend hours and hours crafting decks and picking characters and doing the stuff outside the game, this has another whole world, and there's a whole online universe of people who talk about the optimum ways to build things. But as far as the spooky, the Cthulhu, I think this game is, if you're willing to put the time into it, the number of ways they have come up with how to use a deck of cards to tell a story and play a game. This definitely takes it for me. And just looking real quick on BGG, it's the number 25 game all time out of all games. Number 12 top ranked game in theme. It's an 8.2 rating. I would agree with that wholeheartedly. I'd say this is probably definitely a top 25 game for me all time. But yeah, this is one I would definitely recommend to anybody who, again, it takes a little time. It's not a game you're just going to jump into, any night and just kind of pull it out and learn it and play it. It takes some time, building a deck, setting up a character, getting into the story. But as far as thematic, I'm not normally a big theme guy, but as far as theme and getting into this whole spooky thing, this whole Cthulhu, H.P. Lovecraft world, this game takes it for me.
Which game?
It is Arkham Horror, the LCG. Yeah.
This game. And this game that I'm talking about, it's not for funsies. It's not for co-opiness. It is straight up like duel to the death battling, and that's Unmatched by Restoration Games. And the reason I bring it into my, what do we call it, SpookTober, right? SpookTober list is because, not because of the game itself or how it plays, right? But the characters that are available to you. I don't know, I think like a half a dozen or almost a dozen different expansions that have been out on this Unmatched game. In Unmatched, you're playing a head-to-head battle for the most part. Sometimes you can do 2v2, but for the most part it's 1v1, where you're taking these characters from all different ranges of fiction, and some of them even from nonfiction, and just pitting them against each other in arenas or locations with very simple mechanics for combat and fun mechanics for card play in order to do damage, to block damage, and do special things. As an example, the Cobble and Fog has got, the Invisible Man. It's got Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde. So you're seeing some of the evilness there. I think Dracula's in that one. Then you've got Buffy, right off the bat. The whole Buffy series, that's all vampires and stuff. That's Spooktober-ish. But then you can go crazy and do some fun stuff like, I don't know, have Deadpool go fight a T-Rex, right? It just ranges so much. And the most recent expansion that I purchased included a Bloody Mary. You remember as a kid, Bloody Mary, like come out of the mirror and get you Bloody Mary? Like, there you go. Wow. So grab some spooky themed characters and pit them at each other in a fun, 30 to 45 minutes tops playtime for Unmatched.
Nice. That's a good choice, just because of the combinations. I think the game. So my next game is another kids game. I like to talk about kids games because I got an 8-year-old, and so this is Ghost Fight and Treasure Hunters. It's the number 4 ranked kids game, and actually going back, I forgot to mention Zombie Kids Evolution is actually the number 1 ranked kids game on BGG. So this is, you have 2 spooky games, number 1 and 4 in the kids games. And Ghost Fighting Treasure Hunters is a fairly simple game for kids to play. It's mostly a roll and move. You're basically going into a hotel or mansion or something like that, and you're trying to rescue treasure or rescue things from the sort of hotelish area or a house while still fighting ghosts. And you're trying to keep the ghosts at bay. The little guys, they have like little the Slimer dudes that are running around. And you're trying to get those. And if anytime there's 3 Slimers and everything, a big red like mean guy spawns, and you want to get done here. And I think my kid loves playing this game because he played the. There's a game on the Switch where it's Luigi's Mansion, where you're running around fighting ghosts, and so he kind of equated playing Luigi's Mansion 3 on the Switch to playing Ghost Fighting Treasure Hunters. So it's kind of cool. It's a lighthearted, like you're fighting ghosts, you're trying to keep them at bay and rescue the treasure, get out. But there's an expansion that adds a whole level of difficulty, a little bit more darkness to it, which I think is good. As the kid gets older, you can bring in that expansion. I'll look up the name of it real quick as I'm talking, but it's the Creepy Cellar. So it brings a second level to the sort of the expansion, and it's so the game can grow as the kid grows. But again, it's a good little kids game to play during the Halloween season. If you busted out this and Ghost Fighting Treasure Hunters and Zombie Kids Evolution, you're gonna have a lot of fun plays during the month of October.
All right, I have to take a look at something like that. I like those kind of games. I definitely grew up playing Luigi's Mansion on GameCube, so yeah, that was actually kind of fun. So I guess we're gonna go into one of my favorite IPs, which is the Aliens universe. I'm a big fan of all the Aliens genre, the movie, except for Alien 3 and Resurrection. But the games itself, I have quite a few of the board games and card games. I have Aliens Legendary Encounters, but the one I'm really probably going to mention is Another Glorious Day in the Core, which is basically you are playing the second movie in the Aliens horror movie series. So it's a cooperative game. You can play either the campaign style or skirmish style, or you can create your own little scenario and you can give yourself objectives to play. I play pretty much a campaign style, and you can play the first part of the movie, the second part of the movie, the third part of the movie, and it goes all the way to the end. But it gives you that sense of dread every time. Oh, what's that? Oh, there's just bleeps all over there's a little blips all over the map. We don't know how many aliens are around the corner. You flip it over and it's like, oh, there's nothing there, 0. There's no aliens there. It was just a false reading. Or you flip one over and it's like, oh my God, there's 8 right there in the corner. What do we do? It gives you that tension like that they did in the movie. The mechanic is based off. It's a shared deck of cards in the center of the board. You can draw as many cards as you want to do as many things as you want, but as you exhaust that deck, you are exhausting your characters because you have to recycle cards so many times. And it basically that mechanic is is basically showing the characters being exhausted within the movie, within the campaign. Yes, in one round I did 12 different things. The next round I did 4 different things. Next round I did 1 thing. Why? Because I exhausted myself in the very beginning. I would love to play the campaign. You can play the side missions. If a character gets captured by the alien, you can literally stop the campaign, pause it, and play a side mission to go back and rescue them. And then you can jump back into the campaign again. But it's really fun. I think I played it with a few people at Your Turn. I'm actually in the process of painting it right now, so I'm going to actually probably bring it to Your Turn during the month of October. Hopefully get the whole thing painted, ready to go. But it's basically a card-driven game with minis, but it's completely cooperative. There's no backstabby like there was in the movie. There's just everyone is working together. If someone dies, they're permanently gone from the campaign.
Game over, man.
It's
game over.
Man. And if you love that nostalgia from the movie, it's all over it.
I think I don't think I've played this one with you, but you've taught me in other Aliens games.
It was the dice.
Yes, and the whole theme, it fits Spooktober well. I think it was last October I went and bought like the full DVD or Blu-ray set of all of them just to show my kids. And we watched them in the dark and had that spooky feeling with the rain dripping and the aliens. And, oh man, it's a good theme. That's definitely a good theme.
Yeah, I would definitely. You definitely can't go wrong with anything that's gonna scare you in the middle of the night. That thing used to scare me when I was a kid. Now it's not scary though.
Oh,
Kinda
is it
sad.
though?
No, it's not. Yeah, I'm a little sad about that.
Well, Rob, take us into the next scary title, which I'm not sure where you're going with this one, but I'm curious.
Well, no. I mean, the thing is, the twist at the end, man, it becomes a zombie game.
Oh, but do we spoil that?
Yeah,
dude, the game's been out for like 8 years.
No.
Robert, what do you think? Do we spoil it?
I don't know. That's where I was going to kind of talk about it because I was like, that's where it becomes spooky, I guess.
All right, let's keep it. Let's keep it, right?
Okay.
But we're going to do this. All right, folks. Rob's going to go into this next game, and it may be a spoiler. We're talking Pandemic Legacy Season 1. If you haven't played it before and you intend to play it, you may want to fast forward about 3 or 4 minutes.
Yeah, 3 or 4 minutes maybe just to be safe. Yeah, I'll be brief on it. But yeah, Pandemic Legacy, Season 1 in particular. The other legacies I don't think are certainly nearly what we run into in Season 1. But this is your classic Pandemic. I mean, so the classic Matt Leacock, this is a cooperative version of that. And Rob Daviau got involved and through his legacy genius behind it and turned this into a legacy game. And where we're talking here, where this gets to the spooky side, is at the beginning of the game, you're just playing classic Pandemic. You're rushing around the world, trying to eradicate different diseases, and decisions you make will make permanent changes to the board. That'll make permanent changes to the characters that you're playing, and you'll be able to branch off into different paths. This is between 12 and 24 play sessions because you play over a year. If you fail a year, you have the opportunity to go back and replay that year. You can never play 1 month more than twice, so it would be a maximum of 24 plays. But about 2/3, 3/4 of the way through the game, and here's where we get spoilery, is you are going to open a box that then starts a zombie apocalypse, basically. Your diseases start mutating, and they start causing people to reanimate and come back to life. And so it turns from a disease-fighting game, trying to eradicate diseases, into a whole story where the military gets involved, and you've got zombies running amok, trying to take over cities and trying to kill people. And so that definitely turns into a Night of the Living Dead, name your zombie movie. This kind of plays out those scenarios and kind of gives you your worst nightmares, but again, with the classic Pandemic game, and then throwing, like I say, Rob Daviau, and this was probably his 3rd or 4th big legacy title that he came out with, that he just kind of puts his genius into all of that. So one that we played, Carlos, you and I, and my dad and Mike played through the whole first season. We got about maybe halfway or about a third of the way through Season 2, and we haven't completed that. I don't know if we'll ever get back and finish that up, but Season 0 is something I'm interested in as well. Definitely not the same kind of thing. That's a Cold War topic on that one. But Pandemic Legacy Season 1, definitely one that evolves into that Spooktober theme that we're shooting for here.
I think if you're a fan of World War Z, the movie or even the book, this captures that theme of
just dripping in the feels
of that.
There you go. Yep, for sure. All right, everybody can unmute now, or they can stop hitting that fast forward button.
Yeah, welcome back. Spoilers are done. Spoilers are done. You know what, though? I think Wayne's got a point. The statutes of limitations on the spoilers have expired.
Yeah, it's got to go. And this is 2015, so it's 7 years? Yeah, I think that's long enough.
I don't think you could sue somebody in the state of Florida after 5 years.
There you go.
Statutes of limitations are gone, folks.
It's done.
All right, let's keep it rolling. Talk about Florida, right? One theme that you may have seen on our show: get a lot of power outages out here. There's a lot of storms, and every time a storm happens at my house, the first thing my youngest kid does is run and grab a copy of Shadows in the Forest. Shadows in the Forest is a game from 1985, and I can't remember who got me into this game and brought it up, but it's some German publisher way out somewhere. But the components of the game are a board with little paths, little like paths into a forest, and little trees, almost like photosynthesis. The game, little cardboard trees that you stand up, you kind of build and stand up. So it's got this almost like a 3D forest in the board, And then you're going to have these little lumines, I think they call them. They're like little elf-looking creatures, and each player is going to have a few, and they're going to hide them. We're going to, as the players, we're going to play many versus one, and we're going to hide these little, wood elf creatures into the forest, like tuck them up inside these trees, right? Then the opponent, the bad guy, is going to have like a lantern or a candle, depending on what you have. We have hurricane candles here, and in House Cabrera, and they have the candles, and the candles have to stay on a path. So they have to move based on a die roll on a path. And you're going to move that candle back and forth. What's going to happen is we're going to tell the candle holder, the player, the traitor, the one bad guy, turn around, and then we all get to move our lumines or our little guys around the board. With rules, we can never move them across a ray of light, actual physical, like photons of light. They can't touch it. They have to stay in the shadows. So you kind of try to move them around these physical trees on the board. When we're done moving them, the bad guy rolls a die and then decides which way they're going to move based on that number of spaces, moving that lantern. If during the movement any light shines on one of our little bad guys, they freeze. They're frozen. They're stuck. They can't move anymore. That character is stuck, cannot move anymore. And then our job is, on our next turn, to move an active little lumeline into contact with that frozen one to unfreeze them. So we're trying to get back and like tag them to unfreeze them. But if the light gets, and I can't remember how many it was, of the lumines frozen, they win the game. And it's played completely in the dark using real light and real shadows. It's so simple, the idea of it. But man, it's so much fun when you're playing it with family and kids, because it impresses me, the use of actual lights, candles, and you get that flickering of it on a board. Like, someone came up with that. It's awesome. This is Shadows in the Forest.
That sounds like a cool one. I got to check that out. The next game that I'll talk about is in that Cthulhu world again. I think certainly in October, Halloween, you're going to get a lot of Cthulhu-based games, H.P. Lovecraft. But Elder Sign, 2011 game from Richard Lanius. It's a dice rolling game where you're in the Elder Sign world, the H.P. Lovecraft world, the museum in the 1920s, and you're trying to overcome elder gods and their minions. But it's a great game because there's a million expansions. You can go to the Antarctic, you can go to the water, you can stay in Arkham, so you can kind of travel the world in the game. And it gives you that Mansions of Madness feeling faster because it's a dice rolling game. So that you don't have the app integration of the music, but it's a faster play time, and it's definitely a little bit easier to get into than some of the more complex Arkham games like Arkham Horror or the LCG. So it gives you a little bit of that horror, that Arkham, that H.P. Lovecraft feel in a lighter, faster game. There's a great app for this game if you're into playing games on apps. And certainly it's just a good dice chucking game. And I think where some of that spookiness comes in is, usually as the Elder God starts to power up, you have to kind of rush to finish things. And it's a dice roller, and you need to do certain things in certain order and get certain dice faces in certain times. That adds to that anxiety as the whole group is cooperative. We're all sitting there watching you, and you got to roll these 3 dice, and you need 2 of the 3 to be exactly what you need to defeat this god. Or its minion, and you fail, or you succeed, and it's that emotion that it brings you through. Dice chucking games sometimes get pushed to the side, but the rolling of the dice to get to finish these cards in certain orders adds anxiety to the group, which adds to that feel of that gameplay.
Now, in my almost a dozen plays, I don't think I've ever won. How's the record at Casa Wayne?
I want to say we're 60-40. Probably 6 out of 10 wins on that, just because we played it a lot, over the years. This is a game that definitely we started. We were big into Arkham Horror, and then when this came out, it was like, oh, this is a faster version of Arkham Horror. Because the biggest problem with playing Arkham Horror was, all the expansions. It's just this game creep. The board was huge, and then this gave us an ability to play it faster. So, I think it's just. Probably a little over half, which is what I love. When in cooperative games, I want to be just above a 50-50 win rate. That's where I want to be, at least. Yeah.
I just felt like I was just stomped. I just could not grok Could not grok Elder Signs.
Yeah, it can be kind of tough.
Can be. I think it also boils down to which god you choose, which player characters. You want to make sure your characters are balanced, and you want to make sure like don't go to this location because your character is not good for that location. You know, you have to like play that game of who's better to go where. So.
All right.
So, William, you talked about Who Goes There, which is not the thing, right? But it's kind of in that realm. We got the topic for you to talk. You talked about the Aliens IPs. What about the Thing universe? What are the games you know of?
There's a few games in there. In the Thing universe, there's actually Things at Outpost 31, and then the board game called The Thing, which is probably what most people are familiar with now. It came out in 2000. I think it came out at 2022. So it was a Kickstarter game. It finally came out this year. I think you can now pick it up as retail. Obviously, you're not going to get all the fancy bits with it, but this one is definitely based off the movie, and this is probably going to be. Rob would probably like this because if you do end up becoming the Thing and you do end up infecting other players as a Thing, your hit points are poker chips. And if you're the original Thing, you can assign a certain amount of poker chips as hit points to the other character that is a Thing, and then that character can occupy another part of the map, basically blocking the other players from doing anything. Or they can go in there and they can try to fight you and die and become a third player in the game as far as the Thing. But it still has that same semi-cooperative feel. The only difference with this game is that when you set up the game, someone is the Thing automatically. Someone is already infected. You just don't know who is. The only good thing about this one is that the leadership role exchanges based on where you are on the board. So if you decide to go to a certain part of the board, you're going to end up becoming the leader or the captain this round. All the tasks are done in a style of there's another game that does that. I forget which other game does that, but you end up having a certain amount of cards in your hand. You have sabotage, repair, or use. Those are the only three types of cards in your hand. You have, I think, total 4, maybe 5 cards in hand. You end up giving the captain each card based on what room you're in for that room to see whether or not you're repairing the sabotage, or you're picking up an item to use it, or you're doing something else. The problem is that those cards are picked up and they're shuffled, and then they're flip face up, and you basically have to have more positive than negative cards.
Oh, like Dead of Winter, where everybody submits a card into the pile,
right,
and then you try to suss out who put in what.
But here's the thing: in Dead of Winter, you can say, you know what, I opt out, not putting anything in. This one you have to put something in. So you could be a human player, and you could be like, you know what, I don't want to give a negative card, but I'm not going to give a card that's actually going to work. So I'm just going to give this card as trash. At least it's not bad. But you end up forcing doing something. Or you can put yourself in a position where you don't have to do that anyway, but then everyone's going to look at you and say, hey, you're not going to do anything these rounds? Like, I don't have the cards to do it. And then everyone becomes suspicious and such like that. In that game, though, there's only one person who can do a blood test, and the way they do a blood test is they have to get the proper equipment to do it, and they actually have their own little bag of tokens, and they have to pull the right combination of tokens out in order to test someone.
And this one is The Thing, the board game, the 2022 title.
Yeah.
And this one's published by Pendragon is the top publisher listed on BGG. Designed by Giuseppe Sicero and Andre Crespi. I beat that up. I just want to make sure because there's so many different Thing games out there that the folks at home can find this one.
Yeah, I think this one's definitely more on the horror side. The miniatures are even grotesque, and they look nasty. Unless you get the, I think it's the non-Kickstarter version, which is just cardboard standees.
And I think Rob would agree with me, though. I feel like I would prefer knowing that there is a traitor there versus games where there may or may not be a traitor.
Yeah, I agree. If you know that's then you spend the game trying to suss out who that person is. If there may or may not be, I feel like sometimes you're wasting a lot of effort and energy being paranoid about everybody for everything, and then at the end, oh no, we're all on the same team. And
Well, I
it's
mean,
like, oh,
you can go one way. You can go where everyone, absolutely there is no traitor right now, and then till something happens within the game, then you start suspecting people. I like that part better. That's why I like the who goes there better than the other one. But this one basically says, based on player count, there might be one or two things in the game. Oh, and the dogs in this game play a pinnacle role because they also carry the infection. So if there's ever dogs within a certain part of the board game map, you don't want to go in there unless you can kill them or trap them. So it can get pretty crazy in there. And then every round, the thing can move across the map, and it's based on a certain amount of cards that are played. You flip them over. There's a lot of mechanics to the game. So it gets a little clunky with a lot of cards and little bits you gotta get. Oil and food and gas and weapons, and it gets a little too clunky with the bits. But the good part about that is that it's pretty good with the social deductions. You can't accuse anybody until they've done enough suspicious things in the game, and there's a meter for that on the board. Until their token crosses that particular part in the game, you can't do a blood test on them. You can't segregate them from the rest of the group. He's part of the group until that person does enough bad things or fails enough times, and then you can start doing a few things.
Oh, I guess just like I was a part of the group, but I failed enough where Rob kicked me out of this next title we're going to talk about.
Yeah,
My Father's Work.
yeah. And I talked a little earlier in the list here about a game, Arkham Horror, the card game that requires some time commitment. And I know I've talked a little bit about this one in more detail just a little bit ago in our Bean Playing, because I had a chance to play this one again recently. But My Father's Work is again another one of these semi-cooperative games that's just full of story. There's a lot of reading in this. There's a lot of theme. Basically, you're playing through 3 generations trying to complete a masterwork that your father or your grandfather or your great-grandfather, depending on the generation you're looking from, has started. And it's these big grand things like there's creating lycanthrope, or there's time travel or whatever. So there's these kind of crazy things that
I think I made a phone to hell.
Oh, did you?
I had to
nice.
make components that made a telephone to hell. Like you can just call them. Like, yo.
There's all kinds of grand ideas in this that you start at the very beginning of the game with your first generation, and basically all you're doing is you're being handed thematically some bits of your father's work, of your father's master work that he's spent his whole life trying to do, and then you get 3 generations of playing through trying to complete that master objective. So you don't have to complete it. It's just a whole bunch of points if you can complete it. I played a game of this where I think none of us completed it, or maybe one of us completed it. I played a game of this where we all completed the master work of our father or great-grandfather. And but again, this one is it's got the 3 scenarios that I mentioned before that you can play through. Each scenario has one of 8 different endings depending on how you do kind of semi-cooperatively throughout the scenario. But a neat aspect of this one, it's a worker placement game. My Father's Work is a worker placement game, so that part of it's not difficult to learn. That's not where the investment is, because it's pretty much there are some peculiar rules, some things that you have to remember as you play through it, some things you got to do. It is nice that they have an app that walks you through most of it. They're still polishing up the app for some little things, but you're working together. You can have very different experiences, even playing the same scenario over and over, just depending on how you do and how you approach it and how the group interacts with the scenario. But the real novel part of this game is that for each of the 3 generations, you get to keep a little bit of what the prior generation did, but for the most part, you're wiping away any resources you didn't use that generation, any little works that you tried to complete, these little project cards that you have. If you don't complete them, you pretty much get rid of everything. You get to keep just 1 or 2 little bits of what came from that prior generation, and then you're moving on to the next generation, kind of starting over again to some respect, and then you're trying to progress as far as you can. And I talked a little bit earlier about how the board changes in this one depending on how you do from generation to generation. New locations may pop up that you can place workers. The locations that you had before may allow you to do new things or different things. Or if you go in a tragic direction like we did our first game, some of those will just shut down. They won't even be there anymore, and you can't send people there. Or if you go there, the benefits of going are greatly reduced of what they were before. But as far as a storytelling game, I would put this really high on the list, even though I've only played it 3 times. It's only been out it's not even a year now. This one's quickly climbing the list of one of my favorite games. And if you like worker placement and you're willing to put in 3 or 4 hours into story and playing through this, I think I'd recommend it to just about anybody who has the time and the interest in playing that kind of game.
I can only second it because I know we've played the same scenario twice because we really messed it up the first time. I made some bad decisions. And when we played it again, I felt like the decisions made such a huge difference in the narrative and the story and how it went that they did a good job. They really did a good job of allowing even the same scenario to give you a range of different results.
Yeah, it's to feel different. Just playing it a little bit different can make it completely feel like a different game or a different scenario that you're playing through. So I agree 100%.
I'm going to go more cooperative, straight cooperative. We're just going to go straight to Prospero Hall's design, published by Ravensburger, Horrified, a title from 2019 that you can find at Target. It's one of these like big box store games that I ignored for a while because I just didn't think there'd be much to it, and I should have known better. When you think about Pan Am and other Target games and how well they're getting publishing these games. So I'm glad I got to play it with the family a few times now. It's straight up, the reason it's on this list is because it's straight up Universal Monsters. It's like the Swamp Thing and Frankenstein's monster and the Bride of Frankenstein and Dracula. And you're going to pick a couple or 2 or 3 to make your difficulty. And then the players are all going to play against it. The AI system that runs the monsters is simple, easy, and fast. The way you defeat the monsters is super themey to exactly that type of monster. Right? You're collecting stuff that you need to be able to defeat Dracula, so you need things like items that can damage his coffins in order to get to him, and then you need stuff to be able to stab him with a stake to kill him. So it plays in less than an hour and sets up fast and easy. Steak. Horrified. Like, is that much more I can say? It belongs on this list.
Well, the name itself.
Yeah, it's just automatic. Yeah, and Horrified, one of the big things I talk about this game all the time is the scalability of the difficulty. That's one of the I think, most awesome parts of this game. Getting away from the theme and the spookiness of it is just that you can vary how difficult it is and with the people that you're playing it with, whether it be kids or older people or hardcore gamers, just by adding more monsters that you have to defeat and by even choosing the monsters. There are certain monsters that are rated easier than others, and so you could throw all the hardest ones in there and play against 4 of the bad guys and make it a super difficult, super thinky game. Or if you want a lighter experience, you just play with a couple of monsters. You pick some of the ones that are more straightforward, and you can scale this game all over the map depending on the type of experience you're looking for.
Cool. Yeah, that's the game I haven't played yet, so I definitely want to give it a shot this month, maybe if I can.
Borrow my copy.
Yeah,
There you go.
I would definitely do that. I think the next game I'm talking about is another kids game, but also doesn't have to be a kids game. It's called Stuffed Fables, Jerry Hawthorne game. Sorry, I can't say that very well. Apparently, Plaid Hat Games. It's a story-based game where you're playing the stuffed animals of a young girl, and you're fighting against sort of this scheming evil mastermind, and you have to you get sucked into under the bed and the monsters under the bed, and you're fighting against them to protect this little girl, and each story builds upon that story as you go through this kind of somewhat darkish. I mean the miniatures are pretty grotesque looking, and there's definitely some of that horror-ish or spookiness feeling to it. You get a lot of like that R.L. Stine kind of feel from the game. And it's narrative based. So it's, again, I think a lot of these games we've talked about tonight are all a lot of narrative. There's a lot of theme in them, a lot of discussion about the game and feeling. And so this is a game that really just brings you into it. It's dice placement, worker, moving guys around a map, fighting the bad guys. And it's really cool because the concept of your stuffed animals are there to protect you at night, and they go under the bed to fight the big bad guys. is kind of a cool little concept. I think that fits into a lot of like kids movies we grew up in the 80s and 90s, where the monsters in the closet or under the bed and those kind of things. So it's just a fun little game that I think fits, and you could play this as adults. You don't have a kid to play with. I think this is a game, the story and the gameplay are good enough and complex enough to warrant playing it as adults. But if you have a family playing with a couple of kids and the parents, this is a great experience as a family.
Yeah, one of the real unique and interesting things with this one is, again, not leaning into the theme on it, is the little, if you're playing with young kids, the lessons, I guess I'll call them, that each story, each chapter, once you're done with it, there's discussion points that you can go through and talk to your young child about, and each of the scenarios kind of teaches a lesson. There's everything from wetting the bed to monsters and the fear of the dark and all that kind of thing. Obviously, if you're playing with adults, you just skip that part of it. You just play through the scenarios and you do the strategic thing. But if you're playing with young kids, this one is really cool on the way that it gives you a little bit of after game discussion topic and gives you some points to go over with your kids, which is really cool. And I've got Carlos's version. I think we got through it further than you did. I know we got 6 or 7 scenarios in. I think we're about 2/3 of the way through the game, and then we stalled out on it. So I've got it sitting on my desk here behind me. I keep thinking I need to get this back to Carlos, or we need to finish it. But it's a really, really good game, family weight game, I would say for sure.
Yep, and there's an expansion out now that has where the little girl now has a younger brother, and he comes in and then has his own adventures and get his own stuffies that come into his rescue. So it's kind of cool.
I love how they used the little cotton ball tokens for the health points. So I can kind of visualize the little stuffed animal getting beat up and
Stuffing
cotton stuffing flying out of it. And once he's empty, he's down. He's knocked out. And this game definitely gave me a lot of the nostalgia feels that Wayne talked about, like Little Monsters back from the 80s.
Oh,
who was
my God, that movie?
It's Fred
Yeah.
Savage, wasn't it?
Fred
Wasn't it
Savage.
Fred Savage and Howie Mandel.
Yeah.
That kind of like there's another world underneath the bed kind of a thing. It totally brought me back to
get
that.
Back out of the bed before daylight, or you're trapped.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I remember that.
It was definitely a throwback for me.
Yeah, it reminds me of the Misfit toys from Toy Story. They've got those ones with have the wrong heads on the wrong bodies and stuff like that. This game's full of that stuff. Yep.
Yeah, it was the fishing rod with the legs.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
I finally understood as an adult. She's got a hook. She's the hooker. It took a while for me to get that. That's the kind of toys that you see in stuffed Fables, like these weird, creepy, like Andy's toys. Or I'm sorry,
exactly. Oh, it wasn't Andy. It was the other kid.
Sid's toys.
Sid, yeah.
Kind of that kind of twistedness is what you see in stuffed Fables. Great pick.
Yep.
Go ahead, William.
All right. So what would Spooktober be without zombies? Obviously, we already talked about zombies before, but I'm talking about probably the one of the was it Simon? Was it Come On? Whatever.
However,
I'm gonna do Simon. Whatever. One of the most popular titles that they've released, which was Zombicide. So popular that actually became with a second edition. And
so which one of the 15 editions? Yeah.
Yeah, which one do you want? You want Black Plague? You want the one in space? You want, they got a Western one coming out now too. So, but you can't go wrong with zombies in general. And this one is pretty. The minis are pretty done. They definitely don't slouch in the minis. That's for sure. A lot of the cool designs, the abominations, you can go online, you can see people painting these things to look just like the best movie horror makeup zombies you can think of. Very thematic with, sound, making too much noise. A bunch of survivors who really don't know how to use tools and weaponry to the best of their ability. So as the game progresses, they get better and better. It's basically like you're playing like a B-rated zombie movie.
We did play a B-rated zombie movie. I think we got a series of videos where you, me, and Robert played
Night of the Living Dead.
Night of the Living Dead version.
Yep.
Right. It's but this one's more of a modern kick to it. Very.
I think any of the Zombicide titles would be a good Spooktober themed game.
Yeah,
it's just
you
fighting hordes of zombies.
Just the whole IP for all those on there. If you want more fantasy, you play the Black Plague. If you want more modern stuff, then you play the original Zombicide. Now they have a Western one coming out soon. Hell, they even got one in space. So if you want to play zombies in space, with a little kind of like Aliens theme to it, there you go. You can play that one as well. So they got a flavor for. I think they got a flavor for any era of movies you think of.
Well,
Medieval,
the only one
space.
they don't have is those zombies, those specific ones, those very tiny yet epic zombies.
Oh,
yeah, I was going to go there.
to
You
get
stole
that
my
one
thunder.
in.
So yeah, the segue there. So what does Scott Alms and Game Limb Games do to every major theme? We're talking about taking Zombicide. It's not a direct port, of course. We don't want to step on any toes here, copyright wise, but they definitely have taken those types of games and shrunk them down and put them in a tiny epic package. And we got Tiny Epic Zombies, a 2018 release. And this is your just like Zombicide. I mean, your standard beat 'em up, run around the map, get some loot, fight off the bad guys, roll some dice. This is all of that shrunk down into a tiny epic package. I mean, this is a game. Tiny Epic Zombies was one that Carlos and I have played at least once. I know I've played this with several other people. We've played it a couple times over at Armada Games, and I think Zeno in our group had it, and he has. I think he's got everything now from the Tiny Epic line. He's got all the games. But they work their mastery again. I mean, this is what they do to these games with their series. They take a good theme and then they shrink it down. And I know we've talked about this a lot, but even when we talk about shrinking down, they shrink down component-wise the game. But many of the games they do are so much more than shrinking it down, because the experience you get really is I'd say close to on par with what you get with the full game. So. There's a lot in this little box. Specifically, the ways you can play it. I'm just looking here on BGG to remember. But you can play this cooperatively. You can play it cooperatively where somebody's controlling the zombies and the other players are playing against them, so a one against all. You can play it competitive where everybody's on their own. You can play this game solo. So they've got so many different ways you can play this. There's little modules that you can plug in and out of it. But again, it's your classic beat 'em ups, hack and slash. You're just running around the board trying to kill off all the zombies, complete a couple of objectives. The objectives can change from game to game, but you're drawing those out randomly, and you're just trying to complete some things before you run out of time and before the zombies overrun everything. But another one, if you're looking for a zombie game and maybe in a small space, if you're looking to travel, take this game on the road, Tiny Epic Zombies definitely fits that bill.
And one of the things that isn't so tiny is going to be the King of Tokyo game, because it's all about giant kaiju type monsters. And I get it, this isn't like a Halloween themed game or a horror game in a sense, but it's giant monsters fighting each other in a city. And it's the idea of playing King Kong or playing Cyber Bunny. I don't even have the new one. I don't know if you guys have the new version or the first edition of King of Tokyo.
I have the first edition with all the expansions from it.
I have the first edition with many expansions. What I don't have is the new edition that has the penguin and the cat, the robot cat.
Yeah.
So I feel like I'm missing something.
Maybe. But I mean, this game does have an entire expansion named like the Halloween expansion. So
Oh yeah.
it you definitely chose the right one here, where it fits into the theme.
You can.
Costumes and yeah.
Is that expansion just a character, or is that expansion change the game?
It's characters and it's power-up cards that are specific for Halloween. It gives like the kaijus like costumes and various power-ups and things like that. Yeah.
Oh, so you can get even more Halloween in this monster game.
Correct. Yep.
It's a Richard Garfield game back from 2011, and when it came out, like, it hit the scene hard. Like, it was like, wow, look at what they did with Yahtzee. This is amazing. And we played it here at the house just this past week. It's great for all ages. And anyone who's ever played Yahtzee before, it's super simple to teach them the basic mechanisms of the game.
Absolutely.
So I'm always going to throw King of Tokyo in here in October, SpookTober, for a monster game.
There you go.
Yeah, lots of hours playing this game. That's we played this on the road. We've taken this to picnics, and I know we've played it all over the place. So yeah, definitely a classic, I'd say.
Sure. And I know even like the Halloween expansion gives you like orange dice, a set of orange dice to play with, so it gives you a whole theme there. Yeah. Yep. So my next game is, hey, if you've read Bram Stoker's Dracula or you've seen the movie, this is the game for it. This is Fury of Dracula. It's a one versus four, or one versus a couple people. Basically, if you have three players, two people would each play two of the good guys, and one person plays Dracula. And it's sort of like a deduction game. You know, the four main characters, Nina Harkness and Lord Godalming and Van Helsing, they're hunting down Dracula. So one person gets to play as Dracula, and he's moving around Europe, all throughout Europe, and he's laying down a trail, and he's trying to stay hidden as long as possible so that his traps and springs, go out there. And the other four adventurers are also trying to travel around the world and try to corner him so they can catch him during the daytime, so they can do some damage to him and defeat him. I mean, this is the Bram Stoker Dracula that you've read or seen the movies. This game it nails that theme, it nails that environment, it nails that tenseness there of Dracula. If you fight him at the wrong time, he's going to mess you up pretty good. But if you catch him right, you can do some damage and make him move on. It's a relatively long game. This could be a 2 or 3 hour game easy. And so it can be pretty rough. And I know some people definitely don't like the game because you can sort of play it certain ways to, the other players can starve him of artifacts or cards, or if Dracula's a really experienced player, he can do some good damage. But I think if you play this game with the idea of the theme and play it within the spirit of sort of what Fury of Dracula is, it can be a really good game to play, especially this time of year. This is a game that I don't necessarily play it every year, but when I do play it, it's right around this time of year, and I'll bust it out and we'll play a game of it. So we've probably played it maybe 6 or 7 times over the last 10 years. And that's what it is. It's that game that because it hits home, you just got it, and it comes out this time of year usually for us.
Yeah, good game. It's got that whole hidden movement thing, which I think is hard to pull off. I've played it a couple of games with a hidden movement mechanism that I've enjoyed, and I've played a few that I haven't really enjoyed. This one is one of the ones that I think maybe the first one that I played that really did it well, and just some of the ways it mixes that up with the abilities and the special powers that Dracula has. It's pretty cool. So jumping into the next one, we'll talk about a different kind of horror here. This one being kind of animal-based and throwing us back to, I think it's the 1970s, I believe, was when Jaws came out. So the game release is actually 2019. This, I believe, was a Target exclusive when it first came out. And this one gives you that feeling of some of the angst and some of the like I say, kind of a different kind of fear here, that adrenaline fear of going into the water. Don't go into the water. The beach is closed, with the whole Jaws thing. And this game is one that really surprised me. Again, this was back when games were first kind of becoming Target exclusives, and a lot of people's opinion was, oh, well, it's going to be a garbage game. It's one of these mass-produced games that's coming out, and it's not going to be that interesting or that unique. But in Jaws, it's a one against however many. It's 2 to 4 players. It says you're best with 4. I think I definitely would agree with that. 3 playing against 1. So 1 is playing the shark, and you play through its 3 different scenarios in the game, 3 different settings. And so depending on how each one of the settings ends, the first and second scenario end, there are some repercussions and some carryover to the next scenario. You start with some either handicaps or some advantages, depending on whether you're playing the people or you're playing the shark, as Jaws. And some really kind of unique mechanics in this one. Again, this one really surprised me when it came out, that it was a little deeper than I had expected. It's got some nice, decent wooden bits in it. The production value is pretty nice. The board is nice and glossy, and you've got these. It's another one that kind of fits into a small space. It doesn't take up a whole lot of room because you kind of switch out one board for another as you go through, and each of the boards is in a pretty small form factor. But a real fun game, and this one definitely benefits from somebody knowing the game a little bit better, playing the shark, and the rest of the people kind of teaming up against them. And so, if you're playing with family or with kids, I think this is definitely a family weight game. But you can have the more experienced gamer play the shark, and then the rest kind of team up. My experience in playing this, I played it 4 or 5 times now, is that there's definitely an advantage to being the shark. But the groupthink of if you're playing at 1 against 3 at the maximum player count, the groupthink of the 3, I think, can kind of flip that around. So I think if you play with a full complement of 4 players, then the group has a bit of an advantage. But again, this one definitely gives you some of the tension, some of the angst of are we going to be able to beat that shark? And actually, I think every time I've played this, it really has come down to the end of that third scenario before you really know which side is going to end up winning. So definitely recommend from me for Jaws.
And I'm going to take it back to the early aughts into 2007 for a title by Flying Frog Productions. It's called Last Night on Earth, the zombie game. And when this game came out, I was in love. Like, this was like before Zombicide was a thing, when zombie games were still pretty bad. Like, as much as I loved the original Zombies, I don't know if Wayne, you know what I'm talking about, back in 2001, real early, the Zombies game with the little tiny zombies, miniatures, loved them, loved it. It was it's what we had. But when Last Night on Earth came out, it really blew my mind. Last Night on Earth is a zombie game where it can be 1v1 or 1v2, where one player plays the humans and the other 2 players play the 2 different hordes of zombies trying to beat up on the humans. And they had this awesome artwork design where they went with actual photographs of the actual actors instead of using like artwork. It was a dice chucker. It was so Ameritrash, but it was so themey to the horror movie films. And I mean, I really, until Zombicide came out, this was like my go-to zombie game. And actually, I'm starting to think, I think I got rid of this one. I think I gave it away at one of our game trade days for someone else to just enjoy, because Zombicide just took over for it. But man, it did its job, and it did it well. If you're not into the Simon world, the Zombicide world, I think Last Night on Earth is one to look for.
That's one I haven't played, but one I've heard a lot about over the years, and it's again, I know I'll call it classic. It's one that's been around for a little bit. I don't hear it played so much recently, but people always talk about it with fond memories when that game comes up. So people who played it seem to really like it.
Yeah, like Carlos said, it was like one of those first games that came out with like better miniatures, and by better I mean not
miniatures.
Miniatures in general. It's supposed to look little plastic zombie things, but I liked all the various scenarios they came out with, different ways you can play the game, and different kind of a lot of fan based scenarios and things like that. So yeah, it was definitely a fun game back in the day.
The last game I've got on the list here goes back to an older game that's been kind of redone and re-implemented at least once or twice, but this was originally a 2008 release, is Ghost Stories by Antoine Bauza, a well-known designer. And this one is very puzzly. Ghost Stories, you're working cooperatively. It's a completely cooperative game. It's 1 to 4 players, so there is a solo version of it, and it takes about an hour to play through it. And you're basically playing as Taoist monks trying to defend a village from baddies, from ghosts, and from different horror creatures that are invading from hell. And they're trying to take over the town. And so it's one of these where you're kind of working together just to kind of beat back the bad guys as you play through. There is definitely there's a grid that each round new ghosts or new monsters are going to come out onto the board, and they're going to move in a grid fashion in towards trying to take over the center. And so you're trying to defend parts of the board from being overrun, and they block off certain areas that you can't go to. It's very much a puzzle because different tiles on the board activate different abilities, and so you work as a group to kind of think through, all right, if you go there and you trigger that and I go over here, I can kind of trigger this off of that, and we can kind of combo some things up and take out some of the monsters and complete some of the objectives that we're trying to do. So I've only played this one once. I've seen it played through one time other than that, and it definitely is a game that it's a bit of a brain burner. It's one you definitely have to think through, and I'd say the win rate on this one's low. I know on Dice Tower they talk, Tom Vassell talks about it all the time as being a game that he's never beat or maybe only beat once, and it's one of his favorites. He'd played it 40, 50, 60 times. I got lucky, and I guess the one time I played it, we actually did beat it. It was by the skin of our teeth. But Ghost Stories is definitely, if you're into puzzly games, you're into thinking games, and working together, kind of that group think of, all right, you do this, I'll do that, and we'll combo some things up. to try to complete some objectives, this is the kind of game for you. And the theme and the art on this one is right on point. It's got lots of there's some good art on the cards. There's a couple of little plastic miniatures. Again, kind of speaking of, these aren't real high quality miniatures, but they're little plastic pieces that you can play with that kind of bring you further into that theme. But definitely a fun game, and one that I'd play again.
Well, we can't say that we offered more than 25 games to play for Spooktober if we don't get to at least 26.
26.
So I'm going to go with the final one. This is our 26th official game that we've talked about, and that's going to be Bloody Inn. Bloody Inn is a title from 2015, and it was designed by Nicholas Robert. It's a card game that I got taught by Michael Lorenzo at Escape WinterCon. I'm not putting it on the list because I love it. I'm putting it on the list because it creeped me out to the point where I don't think I'll ever play it again. Like, I just felt dirty. Right, like I felt dirty after playing this game. You're playing a family member. Each of the players are part of a family. And as a family, each of us are working the inn in 1800s France. So we're trying to get visitors and guests into our inn. And then we're trying to get money, take their money, right? Try to get them to buy things or do things where we can get their money. So you're looking for almost like drafting the best guests to get, the ones with the most money. But then you're trying to kill them, right? So take their money and then kill them. But then you got to build annexes to the inn so that you have a place to bury the bodies, because, got to hide the bodies somehow. And you know what? Maybe a guest saw you, so you're going to try to make that guest your accomplice, like bring him into your hand to help you murder more guests. And then, well, God forbid, if a police officer stays in the hotel at the end of the round, then an investigation happens. So you have to try to figure out, can I kill this cop so that I don't get investigated? Yeah. Like, it devolved into, I was like, wow, we're just really evil people here. And the theme hit off well. The play was quick. It was snappy. But it just left me feeling dirty. So for y'all folks looking for some Spooktober, if that's how you want to feel, this one will do it for you.
This is a game I haven't played, but one I look forward to playing, and I know that it's been said that you got to kind of play this with the right mindset. You can't kind of take it too serious. You got to kind of treat it lightly and just kind of laugh at it and kind of enjoy the fun of the game, the mechanisms in playing the game. Because, like I say, if you get too much into thinking about what you're actually doing and thinking about the theme of it, yeah, I mean, it can be pretty horrifying. So,
I'm gonna kill this grandma because she had 2 francs.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so it's one you gotta have the right mindset going into it, and it can be fun. But I caught the very end of y'all's playthrough that year at Escape Winter. I think I was just getting there as y'all were finishing it up, and it was one that I was disappointed that I didn't have a chance to play because I'd heard about it before and I'd heard a lot of people liked it. But yeah, this is one I definitely would like to get to the table sometime.
All right, folks. So that wraps us up on a pretty epic episode. Thank you, fellas, for sticking around. Thank you, Will, for showing up. At this point, we don't forget, join us Thursday nights, 9 p.m. Eastern. Unlike most other podcasts, you don't get the opportunity with those other podcasts to talk to them in person on the phone and tell them why they were wrong.
Oh, yeah.
Or what you agreed with. So join us on the podcast every Thursday night, 9 p.m. Eastern, for where we take your live calls on the live call-in show. So on that note, I'm Rob. No, I'm not Rob.
No, you're not. Start over. On that note, you're Carlos.
On that note, I'm Carlos.
I'm Rob.
And I'm Wayne.
And we are the Beans and Dice Podcast, a podcast about how we game. Thanks for listening. We will catch y'all on the next one.
Thanks for watching the Beans and Dice Podcast. Don't forget to like and subscribe.